My name is Ian Gilmore, and I am chair of the Alcohol Health Alliance, and I'm very proud of the staff of the AHA that have put together this wonderful report on alcohol marketing. And I think that the clue is in the name, No Escape, which emphasizes how people are bombarded 24/7, particularly coming up to Christmas, with alcohol marketing. And the report particularly emphasizes the impact on children and vulnerable people. Children obviously are at a very malleable stage, and the voluntary regulations of the industry are supposed to protect them. The adverts are supposed not to be attracted towards children. And then vulnerable people, we're thinking particularly of people who have an alcohol problem, who are perhaps trying to avoid alcohol, perhaps in recovery, and then again, wherever they go, supermarket, turn on the television, go on social media, they're exposed to advertisements for alcohol. And we've got some really moving stories in the report about how people have found this really has broken their spirit. So you're all very welcome to this. We're on quite a tight schedule. We've just got really 1 hour, and we're delighted that we've got a really distinguished panel of speakers. Sadly, 2 of them, for other pressures, have had to withdraw at the last minute. Dan Carden, MP, sends his apologies, and so does Alex Norris. But we're delighted to have still several very influential MPs, Baroness Jolly, and also one of our special advisors, Melissa Rice, who is an expert by experience. Stop there. That's just a story, one of the many stories I mentioned that of people who've been affected by alcohol marketing when they've been trying to relinquish their habit. And next one. And this just summarizes some of our asks, in particular the short-term ask that in the Health and Care Bill, not only should unhealthy food and soft drinks be in there, but there should also be a 9 p.m. watershed for alcoholic beverages. And then the second point is one of our longer-term aims to align this country with the WHO recommendations. Okay, well, let's move on. And I'm delighted the first speaker is Derek Thomas, who has been the MP for St Ives in West Cornwall for a considerable time, and has been a great supporter. He's been a commissioner on our Alcohol Harm Commission, and we've asked Derek and the other speakers just in 2 or 3 minutes to give us their perspective of this report and alcohol marketing. Derek, you're very welcome.
Thank you, Ian, and again, thank you to all the team of Alcohol Health Alliance, because it's such a, what I found is someone who's been concerned about this for a long time. I worked many years ago with people who had horrible experiences with alcohol, both them and their families. And so to come to Parliament, it was actually 2015 I got elected, and it seemed like a long time, but we've had so much going on, and so many elections and referendums, that it goes very quickly. So what I found with Alcohol Alliance and also with the Commission was just a group of people that are absolutely kindred spirits and really committed to this, which is makes it much easier to push the agenda in a government or potentially in a Parliament that doesn't really want to tackle this, in my view. Many people will be aware that we actually secured a debate with Dan, who sadly has got a real tragic, his dad's very, very ill. But we secured a debate on Thursday afternoon. It was brilliant to be able to particularly refer to the Commission's report that we did 2019 now. And the work around just alcohol being everywhere. And there's some really, we've heard some really incredible stories and experiences that just reinforce my commitment to this. And just over the last couple of days, the just greater coverage on TV about and on radio about how alcohol can be such a harm to people has been really positive. So keep going and keep up the effort. Our concern, we all share the concern of alcohol, the harm caused by alcohol, and the failure to adequately support and treat people with an alcohol problem, alcohol addiction. We've seen that all our lives, I'd imagine. And we heard some stories on Thursday afternoon from colleagues who had lived in that environment, and it's really tragic to hear. We we know that marketing, which is obviously our subject for today, is a very expensive thing to do. Alcohol marketing would not be a thing if it didn't sell more alcohol. So it's actually, we can be confident that there is a direct link between marketing and alcohol harm. And I absolutely believe that the government must address marketing on our screens and in public venues, etc. I'm also very concerned about the way our supermarkets behave. I mean, during the pandemic, I'm quite convinced that I saw a marked increase of pushing cheap alcohol right at the entrances of supermarkets, right across my constituency, right across the lockdowns. And I'm really concerned about that at the time and felt that was really irresponsible. A situation where people actually were much more likely to drink excessively at home. And so there's no escaping, as we're kind of saying, from alcohol being pushed upon us all the time. And we can call for better education, better awareness, better treatment, better even to address the stigma. But that's kind of silly pointless if we don't actually address the issue of marketing and how alcohol is made so easily available to children, to vulnerable people, and to people that are actually really trying to get on top of an addiction. So I don't want to say any more now because I'll probably use my time up. But I really am grateful to be part of what I guess I would describe as a family of people that are committed to this and pushing against the tide. But I believe there's movement, I feel movement, and I feel a greater commitment to trying to resolve this. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Ian, and it's a pleasure to be with you all this morning. I'm very impressed with the work that's done in this report, because I think what is often lacking in lots of these debates is that evidence, is that information that we need to present to government, and I think this report does that incredibly well. And as Derek was saying, if advertising didn't work, they wouldn't do it. So the amount of money that they're spending to try and get people not only to drink, but to drink more and to drink different things and to drink more often is very, very clear in terms of what's presented in the report there. And I think what is mentioned in there about the kind of normalisation of alcohol in all kinds of circumstances, I think is really the cause for concern here, that children see that as a part of life, and that they don't kind of understand at that young age that the harms that alcohol can do, and the problems that it can lead to. And I think by that normalisation through sports sponsorship, through advertising before the watershed, all those things make that normalised. And as we go into the Christmas season as well, there is a normalisation of, oh yes, it's Christmas, you have a drink, it's all very festive, all that kind of thing, and minimising that harm that it can cause, minimising, I suppose, the triggers for those who have been through a struggle with alcohol. I think is quite worrying as well, because it is so pervasive, it is everywhere that you go. And I think as we come into this Christmas period, it must be so difficult for people to kind of go about your daily business and not be challenged with alcohol adverts wherever you go. So I think there's definitely more that needs to be done there. One of the things that I would reflect on a little bit is to an extent difference in Scotland and in England, because some of the things that the Scottish Government have done is around removing the kind of multi-buy offers around alcohol, which still exist here, I think. And when you go into shops here, you really do see that difference, actually, about the presentation of alcohol. And I think there's definitely more that could be done there. We've had great progress with minimum unit pricing, and we're now being challenged to raise the minimum unit price on alcohol, because that has been in place for a few years now, and perhaps that needs to be looked at again. But that isn't, the alcohol action that we have taken in Scotland is recognition that Scotland does have a big problem with alcohol and has had for many years. So I think the more that we can do collectively on a UK basis where that's possible, or where Scotland can do things differently, we have done so. And I think the report today gives us a whole lot of evidence to push that further, to push for the watershed point, and to push it around advertising and sponsorship, because I think there's a lot more that we can do and should do, and the report really gives that impetus and that urgency to it. So I commend it to everybody, and make sure you get reading through it. Thank you.
So I think it would be timely, I think, to go to someone who really has experienced this from the receiving end, so to speak. Melissa Rice is a special advisor to the Alcohol Health Alliance, and is an expert through experience, and has been working closely with Dan Carden recently. So Melissa, I'd be very interested to hear your take on this report.
Oh, thank you. And thank you to everyone at the Alcohol Health Alliance for this truly amazing report. This is something that I feel really passionate about, and I'm an alcoholic. I self-identify as an alcoholic, and I'm going into my 5th year of recovery. And it's when you're away from alcohol, you realise how difficult it is to avoid alcohol. So if I just think about my life, you know, when I was a child, Liverpool was sponsored by Carlsberg, Lambrini girls just wanted to have fun. And I used to watch the soaps every night. So each night I'd be spending some time in the Queen Vic, the Rovers Return, the Woolpack. And I just never realised how much alcohol was present in my everyday life. It was just this constant subliminal drip feed of alcohol imagery and alcohol messaging, and this message that alcohol is needed for a good time. You know, it is normalized and is somehow this huge part of our, you know, cultural identity, you know, in the UK, and it's almost protected. It's something that we're proud of, and for a lot of people that's okay, but the alcohol harm is growing, and we can no longer be in denial about that. So if I think about where I was as a child and the constant imagery, you know, fast forward to 2017, you know, I was alcohol dependent on my 4th chemical detox, you know, made attempts to take my own life, unrecognisable, and my family was completely destroyed. And I do understand that there is a large majority who can do the whole drink responsibly routine. And despite what I went through, I'm not anti-alcohol or a prohibitionist, but I am pro-transparency and accountability. You know, if I think about my experience of recovery in rehab, my closest friend in there was receiving treatment for cocaine. So leaving treatment, she didn't have to worry about cocaine on billboards, on promotion, you know, cocaine promotions in her email from supermarkets, from gift shops. She didn't have to worry about her Instagram being littered with cocaine ads because she talked about, you know, being off cocaine and then was given promotions for it. You know, she didn't have to worry about it being on every aisle, on every shop to drive sales. And she also didn't have to think about, you know, birthday cards, having it on the front, you know, Gogglebox on a Friday night being sponsored by cocaine. Like, could you imagine if that was the case? You know, it just wouldn't happen. And rightfully so, there would be uproar and pushback and that this is wrong. But to me, like, alcohol is a drug, but there is no uproar. And I have had to accept that alcohol is everywhere. So I've had to really put the work in, not, you know, to work on those triggers. But I'm a fortunate one. I know so many people in early recovery, particularly in lockdown, who have really struggled with this constant bombardment of marketing, advertising, promotions. And there's no option to opt out. I can't opt out of society because alcohol is everywhere in society. So I've had to accept it. And, you know, when I think about the difference between tobacco and alcohol advertising, like, it's so confusing. I used to smoke myself, but it is right that tobacco is behind closed shutters, that it is in plain packaging and there's no adverts for it. But when I think about alcohol, I just think it's outrageous that, you know, the mental and physical health links aren't made clear. And it's awful that it's allowed to be in every aisle and proudly on display behind most tills. Like, when I was originally trying to get sober, you know, in say 2016, I remember I had to buy 20-pack of Marlboro Lights, and during that time of the woman going to it, I was just staring at the bottle of vodka, and I was a sight out of mind. And then I bought the bottle of vodka. I don't understand why it is on display in that way. And, you know, on my way to work, I look at a 6-foot bottle of Jack Daniels. I look at, you know, different like cold brews, and that's just me and someone in recovery. There's children looking at that, you know, and I just find it really difficult and sad that, you know, attempts to reduce alcohol harm are passed off as nanny state or trying to ruin it for the rest of us drinkers, but that's just not the case. And I don't understand why this industry, you know, rules the roost and has this much power, and why is it that my 10-year-old nephew is now being protected from seeing Big Macs, but he's perfectly okay to stand in front of a, you know, a big bottle of gin? Or it's just it's really difficult. And I worry about people who are struggling with their mental health, and I worry about those who know that they've got a difficult relationship with alcohol but are afraid to get some support because they want to drink like everybody else. You know, I didn't want to be sober because, you know, my understanding was to drink is to be normal. So there's a lot of work to do, and I think this report and the recommendations really, government must take notice to them.
I remember doing a debate in the chamber about this issue probably a year or so ago, and I remember talking about the men who sit in the town square where I live in Cornwall, drinking cheap cider. And I think it's only when that behaviour starts to change that we will be turning a corner. I don't see it happening anytime soon, and I'm not sure that if I were to sit down and talk with them about it, they would see what the problem was. I think for them, the sort of alcohol they drink is affordable, but also I think they think it's acceptable. They don't look to the future, to their health as they age. They live very much for the moment. And I think until people who are in that situation can find a way to change their thinking, or we can find a way to help them change their thinking, I'm not sure we're going to be out of this anytime soon.
I'd like to perhaps bring back perhaps Derek Thomas first, just to ask, you know, how can it be justified that moves are being made in the health and care bill on unhealthy foods and soft drinks, but not alcohol? And how do you think the government can justify taking this line with, and having already taken that line with tobacco, take the line with unhealthy foods and drinks, and probably also with gambling, but leave alcohol out in the cold? What do you think, Dan? What's behind this government's reluctance to take action?
Thanks, Ian. Thank you very much, and thank you to all those that have spoken. The point that Melissa made about the children being protected from Burger King or McDonald's, but not from alcohol, is really stark and true. We referred to a bit of that in the debate on Thursday, this business of government focus on drugs, government focus on gambling, but not on alcohol. And particularly with children, I just wonder whether we've got a job of work to do. I'm not saying anyone's ignorant, but it hasn't really landed with people that actually the advertising alcohol at whatever time of day and at whatever platform, the normalization of it, which again was mentioned, I think, by Alison. I just don't know if the government or policy advisors have really connected that to harming children. And obviously we know about the stories that the Baroness Jolly has said about the people, youngsters in our street. We know about the harm that's caused around domestic abuse and children in care. I mean, the figures of people going to care because of alcohol, children, is quite stark. But whether marketing actually impacts a child's behaviour and introduces them to alcohol later in life, I don't know that we've really won that argument yet, or really made that case strongly enough. And that's probably where we need to emphasise a bit more. But I guess one thing might be worth talking to is one person would be Henry Dimbleby, who's obviously drafted the government strategy on food, and he is very influential, and probably if we could get him to see how it fits in with the overall strategy, that might well be a positive action to take forward. But I just think it is, and it just hasn't it hasn't landed as a big enough issue in the people that are trying to wrestle with these huge challenges that are coming from all sides at the moment.
Mm. Alison, why do you think Scotland has done so much better? And indeed, I remember that Scotland was ahead of England in Westminster in terms of smoking in public places, for example. I know the problems are worse in Scotland. And
I think that's I think that's part of it. I think that the problems were worse, and we needed to do something about that. And it was a challenge. Those who observed, I suppose, the minimum unit pricing debate from the outside may recall that there was huge outcry from the alcohol industry about it. They took us to court over it, and it was a difficult thing, but it was worth doing. And we think it's already beginning to have something of an impact, but it's a really difficult challenge to turn that around. But I think it's recognising, first of all, that the alcohol causes harm, and I don't think we've got that same kind of level of recognition from the UK government as from the Scottish government. It was very, very evident in Scotland, perhaps more so than it is here, but I think there's definitely more that needs to be done on that front, and often I feel as though it's minimised in a lot of ways, and that's the challenge about proving that that there is an issue, and I think the report does that very well. So I think any opportunity that we've got to go, you know what, it's not just something you can minimise, it's not something you can overlook, it is something you need to act on.
Yeah, that's very helpful. I know certainly that the emphasis on the Commission on Alcohol Harm was harm to others, and I think that's the one argument to me that blows away this sort of individual choice argument. It's up to me if I destroy myself with alcohol, but when there are the children of alcoholics, there are the victims of domestic violence and so on, that argument just isn't sustainable. Baroness Jolly, how do you think we can get our Houses of Parliament to take this issue more seriously?
Well, somebody alluded to this earlier, and clearly we have an opportunity, all of us who are in the House of Lords, that is, taking part in the upcoming health bill debates, have got the opportunity to put amendments down at committee stage, to have a really long session. We have a new minister, so it might be worth some of us going to see him prior to the debate, so that he knows what we're going to be saying, rather than blindside him when we start. But I'm not really sure where local authorities are. I mean, I'm now talking about probably 15 odd years ago, I chaired a primary care trust, and we had really, really good relationship on this issue with the local authorities, and we worked together. But I rather suspect that local authorities will turn around now and say we don't have the budget.
Yes, yeah.
I mean, I just don't know. Derek might be more in touch with what's happening in our neck of the woods. But certainly really, really good work was being done by the local authority then on this issue, and tobacco and all of those things that we want people that aren't good for them.
Well, I think we've got to pray that the Health and Social Care Bill does something about the fragmentation of community services.
Yes.
I think that's been a huge problem. I'm going to try and bring in, if I can now, Susan Laurie, because Susan was a star this morning on GB News with me at some unearthly hour of the morning, and I think Melissa touched on this. Some key moments, some key malevolent influences from marketing messages about alcohol that struck her. Are there any instances that you recall that really set you back?
I think the main one that is really painful for me to revisit is when I left rehab for a second time, and it was the lead up to Christmas, and I was you know, I'd been very quite ill, and you know, at the very far end of where alcohol dependence can take you, in trouble with the police and hospital. And so this rehab was sort of my chance to not only to get sober, but to get my my family back and my self-respect back. But I was surrounded by and I did everything that you should, you know, I started again 12-step meetings, avoided alcohol at all costs. But I did the craziest thing I did was go Christmas shopping, and I was just overwhelmed by the messaging that, you know, about the only way to have fun was with alcohol, the promotional offers to try and get people to buy more alcohol. It was just absolutely overwhelming. And like I say, I wasn't doing anything, putting myself at risk. I was Christmas shopping, and it was just too overwhelming for me. But like I've always said, that was that I was at the extreme. But for anyone who even just wants to cut down, it is just the title of the report is just so apt. There is no escape. It's in your face all the time that it's so much part of our culture. It's so ingrained in everything we do, that trying to cut down on drinking, even, you know, if you just slightly worried that you might be drinking too much, maybe because of lockdown or whatever, is so difficult, because it is just assumed that that's how people have fun. And so this report is and the recommendations are so welcome, and they will make a difference if it happens, because it is very powerful. People don't realize, you know, as Melissa said, it's subliminal. It's just in everything, from television programs, cookery programs, you know, early on a Saturday morning, they're sampling wine, and this just drip feeds that, you know, this is acceptable.
Can I just ask you and Melissa, in the sad expectation that we won't get any great movement from government on marketing in the short term anyway, is there anything else that we can do as a society, or as people committed to helping patients? Is there anything we can do short of changing industry to help this exposure to cues?
I think if it's okay, Laurie, if I just jump in on this one, if I just think of the practical ways. So I've contacted my supermarket Asda, because I don't want to receive those emails. There's not an option to do that. So I just think a practical step would be an option to opt out, or if these supermarkets were able not to have, you know, cheap spirits or special offers, don't circulate them or offer an opt out, or at least don't put them on the main page. Someone should have the choice to go to and make the decision to click on the tab that takes you to alcohol, rather than it being front and center on the landing page. So it may not sound like a huge deal, but for someone in early recovery, someone who just, you know, is at risk of any type of temptation, take that away, you know, be responsible.
That's really, really important, because I gather if you shop online and you've ordered wine or whiskey a previous time, that it'll flash up, have you forgotten the whiskey?
Absolutely.
You know, and you know, maybe we should be approaching the, you know, Waitrose and Tesco's and Sainsbury's and as the big online shop people, just ask them to make a voluntary decision to stop that queue.
Yeah.
Anything you want to add, Susan?
I absolutely agree with Melissa, and all I would add was that I think that we need, you know, because we might not get the buy-in from the industry, is to raise awareness of the harm, in the same way you know, that high profile people, celebrities who maybe have struggled with their mental health, talk about that freely, and it's really changed how we talk about mental health. I think the same should happen with alcohol. We need to raise awareness. I always say that I'm nobody different or out of the ordinary. I was just an ordinary person who succumbed to serious alcohol addiction. And I think we need to have people talking about the actual harm that it can cause, because we have all these messages about how fun it is or how romantic. We need high profile people talking about the real problems that it causes.
Absolutely, that's great. I'm delighted Baroness Finlay has been able to join us, who, as I mentioned earlier, chaired our Commission on Alcohol Harm. Elora, would you like to come in and comment on the report or any particular aspect?
Well, thank you. I'm sorry, I'm travelling, so that's why I'm joining in a rather fragmented way and coming in late. And just listening to the conversation now, it strikes me that actually we could build on the age assurance bill of Baroness Kidron and go to the supermarkets and point out that if they control these pop-ups and these spontaneous prompts about alcohol coming up, then they will be ahead of the game. And because they determine what goes out from their servers, and that actually that, you know, that they could win brownie points and accolades for setting a good example that would then be quoted in Parliament by people who want to go for age assurance, and also that it makes sure that they are not contaminated by the link with pornography or with prompts to eating disorders and suicide pop-ups and so on. So really almost pull the supermarkets in on the side of the angels, if you like. And I think there is a real problem. We didn't get anywhere trying to lower the drink drive limit. We didn't get anywhere with any of the alcohol things. And when we've had questions about them, it's quite clear that the alcohol industry has got a major foothold and is arguing about survival of jobs now in their sector. So they're going to the Treasury and spinning it that less alcohol would mean unemployment and a cost to the exchequer. So they're being very canny, really.
Yeah.
But certainly, I think what we put in our harms report still stands the test of time. So that would just be my suggestion, Ian. That actually, we're talking to the supermarkets, we could build on Kidron's bill, Baroness Kidron's bill.
Thank you very much. Before bringing in Alison again, I just, in the interest of fairness, like to read out a question from Gregor Zwerwin, who is from the Spirits Europe, an industry body, saying underage drinking and heavy episodic drinking are on a decline in most EU countries. How does this declining trend link with marketing? Are people less targeted and exposed to alcohol marketing over the last decade? Or do we see this positive trend despite no changes in alcohol marketing? Well, I think it's an old tactic to say just take one single thing in isolation and say because that's changed and that hasn't, therefore the two can't be correlated. I don't think anyone is saying marketing is the only influence on alcohol harm, but all the independent evidence done by academics has shown that link. That link is there. It may be not evident at certain times. It may be evident at other times. But certainly, I think to imply that because some harms from alcohol have gone down in some European countries, therefore marketing is not important, I would reject that. I'd also point out, for example, that we're quite lax compared to Europe, where, or certainly in France, for example, a complete ban on broadcast advertising of alcoholic beverages, a complete ban on sports sponsorship by alcohol companies. So I don't think Europe can be portrayed as being softer on alcohol than we are. But anyway, thanks for the question, and we will maintain a dialogue. Alison, you wanted to come back?
I do, yeah, sorry, it was just on the point about supermarkets, which I think is very well made, and I think something to pursue. And I was really quite shocked. I was in Tesco and they're running very deep discounting of alcohol for people who have club cards just now. And I was really shocked at quite how irresponsible that was. So I think if we're taking on the supermarkets and asking them to be helpful, I think some consideration of that kind of discounting for loyal customers, I think that also needs to be challenged as well.
Yeah, good point. Got some other questions coming in. I'm sorry, I don't have the names of who's asked all these questions, but one is, are there any restrictions on social media, internet advertising of anything? Question mark. Well, I think there probably is, but I'm not expert enough to answer that one. Melissa, you've got a hand up.
Yeah. So I can only talk about my own personal experience on social media. You can choose what you would like restricted on certain platforms. However, the algorithm isn't great. So because I talk about sobriety and obviously being alcohol free, they still somehow manage to trickle in. So whilst there are some tools that a user can filter what comes through, how effective that is, I don't know. But just on that, throughout lockdown, obviously when retailers had to adjust and change how they market their products, I was absolutely bombarded with home delivery. So certain retailers now shifting to home delivery of alcohol and subscribe and save, and then this new craze of alcohol water, so vodka and water, you can get that home delivered. So it whilst there are, as I said, tools, I don't think it goes far enough.
I mean, clearly, I'm not an expert in the area, and if anybody knows the answer, please let me know. But I don't think you can advertise illicit drugs or tobacco on the internet. So I presume there are some intergovernmental regulations. Dan, do you have any knowledge in this area? Or sorry, Derek?
No, but no, I don't. I mean, the assumptions you made, I'm sure, are right. But the opportunity will be, as we do the online the online harms bill. I think, I'm not sure that's the exact term for it, but that's kind of finding its way through Parliament at the moment, and it's a bit of a Christmas tree. We're trying to hang lots of things on it, but it's actually the right thing to do, and you need to do it now, because if we don't do it now, then there'll be another opportunity. It'll be a long time before we get to address it. Even if we deal with marketing in the other kind of more traditional platforms, it would be a long time to address it online. But we ought to have a look at, as an APG, maybe it's worth looking at the opportunity for the digital harms bill. I think that's what it's called.
I think, Sarah, you drew attention to an ASA study recently. Do you want to comment on that?
Yes, of course. I think Gemma also just posted it in the chat. It's basically been a very recent study from the Advertising Standards Authority that said that there is a very concerning potential for children to be exposed to alcohol marketing online. And they basically said that alcohol campaigns appear to be falling short in minimizing the possibility of children being exposed to paid for alcohol ads through their social media accounts. So it's basically saying like they aren't doing enough to to prevent children from seeing those ads online. And they aren't using enough targeting of what you could be doing. And so basically what they are saying that like the current provisions aren't really working and that children are exposed to a lot of the marketing.
Okay. So another good point from Woody Khan here. Loneliness and alcohol are a risky combination for some people around Christmas, and the government does seem to at least recognize that COVID has increased loneliness. He wonders if this is an entrance into some policy change. I certainly think mental illness linked to loneliness is certainly, I think, gone up the political agenda. So, I think that's a good point. Derek, have you any thoughts on linking this to loneliness, or perhaps more generally to mental health?
I feel slightly picked on here.
I think there aren't very many MPs on the call, Derek.
Alison is.
You can change things for us.
All I would. It's a good reminder, because we did a huge amount of work on the Loneliness Commission and lots of things several years back, and and I don't really know if it comes up enough in Parliament, but my point about the lockdown and the fact that supermarkets went hell for leather, if I can use French, to promote greater, more alcohol being consumed at home when people absolutely are on their own. We locked down the country. Huge numbers of people of all ages were completely on their own for long periods of time, and we're seeing some of the harm done because of that now. And alcohol certainly didn't help with that. So there will be lots of opportunities that, even as we come out of this COVID, look at the harm, look at the backlog, look at all the things that we need to do to try and correct things, even the inquiry into how we dealt with the pandemic itself. I'm sure that the role of retail will be in there somewhere, even though it's largely directed at how public sector responded. So I think we just have to be alert to every opportunity we can to get this message out, because it's completely relevant. The loneliness and how we respond to how we address loneliness is really important, and giving them free access or cheap access to alcohol is not a responsible way of supporting people who are lonely. So completely agree that we need to find opportunities to flag it up, and that might be something that the Alcohol Health Alliance can help us MPs in terms of parliamentary questions, etc. Hint, hint.
Well, I think this obviously opens up the whole of the social media thing too, but I don't know if there are any new tactics within conventional advertising. Melissa or Susan, would either you like to comment on, aware of any new tactics that are being used?
I noticed Amazon were doing subscribe and save, which I thought was new, that you can sign up to monthly alcohol subscription, and then you'll save money. I don't know how useful it is for anybody to know that once a month you're going to get X amount of whiskey dropped off at your door. I think as well, there's now apps. There's I don't want to I know I've named Amazon, but I can't remember the app. I think it's called Get Here, and it's like it on the side of the bus, it was like you could get booze in under 15 minutes. So yep. It's like retail's changing, and it's like alcohol's snuck in. And I just, so knowing that you can get alcohol under 15 minutes through these like online apps, get booze quick type thing. I think that's new. I think there was like it seems it's evolved from like 15 years ago where you could ring an alcohol delivery service. Now it's gone to apps. So I think that's the two new things that come to mind when I think about it.
Whenever I don't know the answer to anything to do with alcohol policy, I usually ask Catherine Severi, who's the Chief Executive of the Institute of Alcohol Studies. It's very unfair to put her on the spot now. She may be drinking a cup of coffee, but there she is. Catherine, anything you'd like to say, anything you're aware of that would, apart from obviously the increase in Twitter and Facebook and the like, but any new tactics of industry that we should be ready for?
I think that much of this has been captured in the previous discussions. I think that there are particular concerns around social media influencers and the blurred boundaries between obvious paid for advertising and people who are very influential in children and young people's lives, consuming products, and they're not being that kind of clear cutoff that they're being paid to promote certain products. So I think that the celebrity and social influencers tactic is something that warrants further investigation. But I would go back to the recommendations from the report that's launched today and say that the government is taking action on online advertising when it comes to unhealthy food and drink. And it doesn't make any sense that alcohol is not included in that definition. So I think that, you know, the government is willing to take on this pretty unwieldy new media and new means of advertising products, and alcohol should be firmly within those plans, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very, I mean, I've not come across an argument why alcohol shouldn't be included, as well as, you know, Coca-Cola and the like. But do I remember something recently that the famous footballer refused to have the Heineken bottle on the table when he was giving interviews after Euro football or something? Does that ring a bell?
Yeah. Sorry, Ian, I was going to add something when you asked earlier, something that popped up just coincidentally yesterday for me. And I think it's this whole thing around, especially aimed at women, and especially after lockdown, when we got used to, you know, seeing more and more of wine o'clock and gin o'clock. Something popped up for a date night kit for vodka. And associating it with romance and having a date night. So I think, you know, new techniques that they're using, I think more and more latching on to, you know, the fact that women are talking about maybe drinking earlier, and this date night kit just blew my mind, took my breath away. It was a bottle of vodka and various other things, but just to make it seem very innocent.
Absolutely. Well, Elora Finlay has made the important point, I think, aimed at Derek. If the health and care bill public issue has been an opportunity to raise, including alcohol in it, and because it's coming to the House of Lords next week. And I think we've got a reflection here from Juan Trello. It's important to protect children, adolescents, and vulnerable people. However, we need also to consider that we all are potentially vulnerable due to the aggressive marketing strategies, and focusing on specific target audiences may underestimate the size of the problem. So yes, concentrate on children and vulnerable people, but don't forget that we all have vulnerability, and we all have this implicit belief that we're somehow protected where other people are vulnerable. And of course, that's not necessarily so. We're coming up to the last few minutes. I really wanted to ask a concluding question to our panel, and I'm not particularly putting you on the line. Derek will ask everybody this question, and we've only got 4 minutes for the panel. What are you personally taking away from this discussion today, and what action do you think you'll be able to take as a result of it? But we'll start with you, Derek.
Thank you very much. Well, firstly, again, I appreciate that together we can make progress. I'll quickly touch on the Health and Social Care Bill, and obviously the opportunity for everyone here. I don't know that the government will particularly adopt anything that specifically mentions alcohol, but I think with the integration of health and social care, with the integrated care systems, and also the increase of, or the development of the primary care networks, I think that is the route to take. And I think we should all be talking to primary care networks and integrated health systems about what their attitude will be. But we can't get away from the fact that it needs a population-wide measure really to really address this. It has to be from government in Westminster, which is where I'll continue to press.
Excellent. Maybe I could ask Baroness Jolly next, you know, what do you think you will personally take away from this report and the discussion we've just had, and that might lead to some action you're able to take?
I think, as I alluded earlier, we have the Health and Social Care Bill starting in the Lords fairly soon, and I think that's an ideal opportunity. The government might not accept any amendments, but it's certainly an opportunity to have a public debate and to use that opportunity to press for any media that we can get out of it.
Yeah, good. Okay, Melissa, what would be your take-home messages and action you'll be calling for?
I think me take home one messages was that it's just it's great to know that there's so many people who think in a similar way to me, and it's assuring to know that there's the support there for it. I think what action I'm gonna be doing, I think the supermarkets. So as we've said, or as you introduced me, I work with Dan Carden MP. So I think Derek, Alison, etc. I'll be in touch, and maybe we should, get together and think about how we address that, because I think it's a real practical, straightforward, really measure that we can introduce. So yeah, so you'll hear from me.
Okay. And well, thank you very much. I think we're coming up to 11 o'clock and we should finish promptly. I know you've all got busy lives, but I will certainly take away from this that it's a no-brainer. It's very hard to come up with any logical argument why we shouldn't take action on alcohol advertising, particularly in light of moves that have already been made on tobacco and are currently being made on unhealthy foods and drinks. It just doesn't make sense. And I think we need to keep pressing the argument about children and vulnerable adults, but also I think the harm to others, not necessarily vulnerable others, but just people who are the victims of exposure to people whose lives are cast asunder by alcohol. So congratulations to all those involved in producing the report. A particular thanks, I think, to Sarah Scherenberg, who's been helped to organise this event too, and to all the other team at the Alcohol Health Alliance. It's been a really great effort. We're really grateful to you. Thanks to all the participants, and could you please follow the AHA, the Health Alliance, on social media, and if possible, become a campaigner for us. We think this is something that is important, and we would really appreciate your support. So thanks very much, everybody, for coming, and we'll sign off now.